Sure. Thank you so much for joining us for our final part, our part 3. We had already covered the Strata session as our first session, and we covered the Prisma Cloud session just last week. So today, Tony is going to cover the Cortex session. But as promised today, at the end of the session, that's when we're going to run our final quiz, where you accumulate your final scores. Already we have a running leaderboard where some people are already close to being our first prize winners and second and our third prize. So obviously the last session will determine who will be the final users. But just as usual, I'll just put our rules on the chat box to make sure that you'll be able to connect to kahoot.it to do the quiz. So as I was talking to some of the customers, they did highlight that if you use your mobile phone, it's actually quicker. Your answers will load much quicker than on your PC. So that's a hint to take note of, because obviously our answers, the quicker you answer the correct answer, the higher your score is. So right now I'll just hand it over to Tony to do our presentation, then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay. And welcome, everyone. So people that don't know me, my name is Tony Da Costa. I'm a systems engineer at Palo Alto Networks, and I look after the SADC region. What we're talking today, obviously, is about Cortex. It's our third, let's say, pillar that we've got. What I know about Cortex is absolutely nothing. Okay, I'm joking. All right. So what we'll discuss is the three main portions that form part of Cortex, which is XDR, XSOAR, and expense. All right. So why do we look at and why did we focus on Cortex? It's very, very simple. Everything has changed. The market has changed, the way that businesses are running, everything has changed. And with that, it's created other issues. So, for example, at the moment, it's just a lot of noise. Everyone I talk to, everybody talks to me about how do we handle all these alerts. In other words, the alert fatigue is absolutely massive. The other issue is products, too many products. And it's a very, very simple reason for that. It's new type of threats come along, and then you need some other type of solution to try and stop that type of threat. So you're starting to get too many products. The problem is you can't piece them together. You can't put them all together to actually find out what's the incident. So I was actually in Zambia 3 months ago, and I met with one of the customers. And not a very big customer. And I asked the question, how many security solutions or products do they have in their organization? And interesting enough, for a small organization, they had 17 different security products. Now, based on the studies that we've done across the globe and big and small organizations, the average is sitting at around about anything between 30 to 50 different security products that organizations have got, which means if an incident happens, everyone sort of reports in their own way. And many times you think that there's multiple attacks where in the meantime it's one, because you can't piece them together, so it becomes a problem. And then everything is all manual. I mean, when something happens, we actually in a reactive phase, and we need to go and do things manually. I sat in a conference with Kevin Mitnick about 2 months ago. And one of the big things that he's actually been saying all the time is that we need to start automating as much as possible, because speed is actually the key factor. So we need to look at ways that we make things faster. And the only way to do that is by automation. So we have to look away from the whole manual process. So if you look at the what the existing approach to a security operations is, it's like a mess. Okay, it's because there's too many things. Like I said, you know, we've got SIEMs, we've got EDRs, we've got a cloud at the moment, we've got IoT devices, and everything just becomes a problem. Now, if you've got, for example, a SOC, hopefully that will solve the issue. The only problem is that most of the SOCs are actually manual SOCs, which means that the analysts still have to do all the stuff themselves, and it just becomes too much to handle. So imagine an organization with a SOC, let's say with 10 analysts, but they get in the region of around about, let's say, 50,000 alerts per day. Now, it doesn't mean that those 50,000 alerts are all bad. Now, what you need to do is take those 50,000 and reduce it to what is actually important. So let's say you're able to reduce this to 20 alerts a day. Okay, 20 alerts, you've got 10 analysts, means that 2 alerts or 2 events that each analyst needs to handle per day, which doesn't sound a lot. But unfortunately, with all the manual process that we do, one of these alerts or one of these incidents could take a day, 2 days, or 3 days, or even longer to fix. Now, if that actually happens, what happens is that the next day you've got another 2 alerts that comes to your name, but you're still working on the first one, which means now you've got 3. And the following day, then all of a sudden you've got 5. And this just starts snowballing. By the end of the week, you can't catch up anymore. And this is where things need to start changing. Okay, so what do we do from a Palo Alto perspective? And what is Cortex? So Cortex, in a nutshell, is to look at being proactive when it comes to security. So the whole idea is to prevent everything you can, all right? Make sure that you focus on the prevention part, and then everything you can't prevent, okay? Because if somebody comes to anybody and says, we can stop everything, they're actually lying. That is not possible. And us at Palo Alto will tell you the same. We cannot stop everything. For a simple reason is that we typically are one step behind the curve when it comes to the bad actors, all right? So we can't say that we prevent everything, but everything that we can, we need to do. Everything that you can't, you need to be able to detect and be able to investigate that as fast as possible. Now, that's where, for example, things like machine learning and artificial intelligence has to come into play. Like I said, we all humans, we can only do so much, and we also make errors, okay? So things that we don't know of is we need to have a way to detect and investigate as fast as possible. And then the last portion of that, well, the second last portion, because there's one right on top that says expanse, is actually starting to automate everything. So start automating those responses, and we have to get smarter. The whole idea is we need to be smarter with every type of incident that we pick up. So this is how we have to focus. And then the last section there, and you'll see it right on top where it says expanse, that is where we actually have to start protecting all the attack surfaces. Now, with people working remotely, the cloud, there's a lot of things that have changed. So your attack surface has actually changed dramatically. If you look at what's happened since 2019, and why I mentioned 2019 is because when the whole world was forced to go home, okay? And we had to start working from home. Security at somebody's house is not the same as in a data center, for example. And that means that the attack surface now all of a sudden has changed. So if I want to attack, for example, an organization, I don't have to go through their firewalls. I don't have to go through their security that they've got. What I do is I just find out where this person is and actually attack their home network. And from the home network, I can then get in from that perspective. So the attack surface has changed, and we need to understand where that surface is and protect that. So if we look at from a Cortex in a holistic ecosystem, what we actually do. So let me just see if I can just make a pointer here quickly so that we all know where we are. So we've got the three portions as I mentioned. So we've got XDR that sits over here. We've got XSOAR that looks at the automation and response there. And then we've got expense on this side. This Christmas security services has actually fallen now into our unit 42, which is actually a service that we can offer customers to help them if they've been breached, and also give advice on what are the trends that we actually see. Okay, that doesn't form part of Cortex. It's a service separate, but it falls in line of what we actually want to do. So when we start talking about the XDR component, it's all to do with how we take incidents from everywhere, analyze them, be able to stitch everything together, and then be able to understand what's actually going on. So our XSOAR is our security orchestration, automation, and response tool. Now, when I mentioned about automating things, this is what this actually does. So it is not a SIM, okay, but you integrate into things like SIMs or any third-party solutions where you can now actually starting to automate as much as possible. And then the expense, like I mentioned, is to understand all the attack surfaces that are there. What is it? What's being exposed? What are the risks? And then once you understand that, now you can actually start closing up those holes. So let's look at Cortex XDR. So the idea of Cortex XDR is to look at all the noise that's out there and focus on what's real threats. Okay, so if we look at the evolution of endpoint, and that's what typically XDR is, it's focusing on the endpoint, but there's an evolution that's come from that. So as we all know, it's all started with the antivirus. So we know that McAfee was the first guys to come up with an antivirus solution, and that was typically to look at known vulnerabilities that there's a database of signatures for. Okay, so a virus was released, analyze the virus, create a signature, antivirus, stop it. The next thing that happened from there was the next generation antivirus. So that's where it started providing a little bit more intelligence when it comes to trying to find any type of malware. And that was with the creation of things like machine learning based detection and some form of AI that was brought into that. Now, moving from there is where then they started looking at security suites, where you started putting more than just the antivirus or just the malware portion. Now you started looking at a whole lot more things. You started making sure that there were actual policies in place, there was modules, and that you could manage it properly. So that's where then the ESS portion came along. Now, as the threats obviously increase and as they actually change, things needed to change. So we needed to have things like an EDR, where you needed to be able to start detecting and response. Now, remember I said that you can't stop everything because there are things that are unknown. In other words, the absolute zero-day type of attack, you don't know, but you need to be able to detect it. So before the EDR, there was no things to actually detect it. Something came in, we analyzed it, we got a signature for it, we stop it. We can pick up something with machine learning, we can actually stop it. But if it's something very, very new, something that has never been seen before, the technique that's been created with that type of attack, there was no visibility to it, so you couldn't react to it. And that's where EDR came, is where you start detecting everything and able to actually respond to that. Now that's where we actually looked at it and said, well, there's something missing. And we invented XDR. Now, XDR stands for the extended detection and response. Why? Again, because everything has changed. Our perimeter has changed. We don't work behind a perimeter anymore. We're working at home. So we needed to start taking everything we did from an endpoint detection and response, and we needed to extend it. So you need to be able to extend that to the network and to the cloud, for example. You need to be able to stitch all this together so that you can actually respond properly. So if we look at how we do it, and our key differentiators is that we work not only from an endpoint perspective. Yes, the endpoint is the key, but we can now bring information in from the network, from the cloud, and from third-party data. And why is this important? Now, remember I mentioned earlier that because of all these different products that they are, and the way that they report, and the way that they advertise the type of incident, you could be fighting 2 or 3 different fires, where in actual fact, it's actually the same type of attack. Okay, so now all of a sudden you're focusing on 3 different areas where if you had visibility and you could stitch everything together, you can actually say, hang on, this is exactly the same threat. So we're actually going to fight 1 fire instead of fighting 3 fires. Again, speed. Start looking at how we handle that. So from our perspective, and how does our XDR component actually form part? So there's 4 clear-cut portions that we've got in our XDR solution. And that's endpoint protection. So the standard endpoint protection that you would have with any other tool that you've got there, from Symantec, McAfee, Trend, Microsoft, whoever, that's what you typically would look at. Then we have a big difference, or big differentiator from our perspective. We look at behavioral analytics. So we've got the UBA, which is a user behavior analytics, which is extremely important, because when we start talking about behavior, we don't really rely too much on signatures, because if things change, okay, and let's take ransomware, because it's nice, easy to explain. When you get hit with ransomware, what it does, it starts encrypting files. So that's not a normal behavior. When we look at that, we're saying this is not the behavior of this user to encrypt files. Boom, you stop it and you treat it as malware. So the ransomware gets contained. The other thing is we also look at the network portion. So tie in the network detection and the response. So get information from the firewalls and actually start analyzing that and bring that together. And at the end of it, putting everything together is now taking the network and the endpoint and now having that EDR capability to form part of this whole XDR. So if we look at the focus of how we actually look at it, everything has got to do with preventing. So our focus is purely on preventing anything. So if we got the pre-execution, so in other words, before a malware gets actually executed, there's certain things that we actually look at and do analysis on. So in other words, reconnaissance, making sure that vulnerabilities that could exist somewhere is not being exploited. We're looking at exploit prevention, which blocks techniques used to manipulate the applications, for example. Looking at the actual kernel, making sure that nothing is got a gap within the kernel that can be used to actually or be used as an attack vector. The other one is also the threat intelligence, things like wildfire, getting information from our wildfire. Wildfire is our cloud solution where we analyze everything that comes from all over the world. And then we're taking things like artificial intelligence to actually look at the local analysis. And again, also the wildfire malware type of analysis. So when I talk about wildfire, wildfire is not just what people think of a sandbox environment. I say, you know what, you could call it that, but I'll say it's actually maybe a sandbox that's on absolute massive steroids, because we do so much more when it comes to wildfire. And then obviously when it comes to the post-execution, what happens after that? It's making sure that any type of process that gets stopped. So any script-based threat, we actually block it. I spoke about blocking ransomware, for example, and how we actually do that from a behavioral perspective and not from a signature perspective. And then obviously that ties into the last, where we look at stopping all type of attacks based on the endpoint events. What's happening on the endpoint? We can actually look at that. Now, this is all great, but what happens when we offline? And we have actually got an agent as well that sits in there. And that agent takes exactly the same process as if you were online. So again, the reconnaissance, the exploit, the kernel, the threat intelligence, all the way through to the behavioral threat protection, it's all done from an offline perspective as well. Okay, so this is how we make sure that if we're not connected, that endpoint remains secure, because you don't want to have a endpoint that gets compromised, and when you plug it into the network, this spreads across across our whole environment. When we talk about XDR, and I've mentioned this before, is how we actually stitch everything together. So from an endpoint there to a cloud, but also the identity. Now, identity has become quite critical for anybody, and this has got a focus on things like zero trust, where you can't trust anything anymore. So the whole change of security should go towards that. And XDR forms part of that whole scenario. So the whole idea is to be able to take all the data, or the cross data, be able to do all the investigation, the detection, and be able to respond in a timely manner to make sure that everything remains intact, so that we don't create any further gaps. So quickly containing a threat instance, for example, you can do further investigation with remote terminals, for example. So you can actually now able to use, or the administrator can actually now remote terminal into a system that actually then will allow you to establish that connection from the XDR directly to actually monitor that endpoint in the network. The new remote terminal can emulate a local graphic user interface, and it is also available with the use of things like Pathfinder. In addition, the remote terminal command shell from which you can actually run commands and scripts to try and solve any type of issues. And then after connecting to the endpoint, you can navigate the local file directory, you can manage the files or folders, and actually the processes, and perform any type of remediation action that's actually required. At the end of actually the session, you can also save out a session report, which can include things like any type of files that you flag to do a follow-up. Now, remote terminal maintains an audit of all interactions between the actual user and the host, logging connections, files, tool uploads, any items marked to be noted against that actual user. Also, any data downloaded from the host can be hashed, creating a defensive or defensible process meeting basic forensic requirements. And then obviously with the tight integration with enforcement points, we can actually own those enforcement points. Now, if you look at, this is a little view of how we can actually use that command line, where we actually now going in with and connecting to a remote machine. This is a live terminal. So now we've actually got access to that machine that we've connected to. And now we can actually start seeing what are the processes. So we can start now suspending certain processes. We can log into a directory. We can look and see what are the files there. In this case, there's an IMAP file that we actually looking. And these are like tools that can actually be used for people to gain information. So now you can actually do a whole lot of things with it. You can rename it, you can delete it. Again, you're using this to make things so much simpler for how we actually can handle an attack. And as an administrator, you can now actually log in and you can do what you need to do. When we look at Cortex, it comes in two distinctive flavors. Let's put it, so one is the Prevent, the other one is the Pro. And these are what you get from the two different versions. So the Prevent is basically standard, your next generation endpoint security. Okay, it hasn't got the detection and response capability as you would have, from example, from the Pro. Additional to the Pro, there's other things that you can add to. So host insights, that's a way to identify and eliminate any type of risks with things like vulnerability assessments and search and destroy capabilities. Also having managed threat hunting capability. So our unit 42, for example, is our unit where we actually go and discover any type of new threats and so forth. So it's our analytics team. These people can actually do the threat hunting for you as well. And then autofocus is our threat intelligence feed, is our own, based on all the information we capture globally. And we can now start using that to actually enrich the type of investigations that we're actually doing. The data sources, the Prevent is only from the endpoint. From the Pro, again, it's endpoint, network, cloud, and virtually or a lot of the third-party products that are out there. And then obviously services. We can attach any type of services based through partners, through our professional services, and in a lot of cases, like organizations like DGIT. If we look at where we actually stand with our XDR versus the competition. So if we look at the MITRE round 2 attack, again, we fared extremely well, the highest out there. And again, we were better than things like Microsoft, SentinelOne, CloudStrike, Symantec. These are not us saying it. This is from the MITRE report. And again, we are from an AV competitive endpoint perspective. Again, we are positioned extremely well there together with CloudStrike and ESET. So if we look at from where we came, so where we started with XDR version 1.0, that was in Q2 of 2019. Quite interesting that date, but it's interesting that it actually happened at that time. And I'll tell you why, because our focus before COVID was already, we saw that more and more businesses are changing to remote work. So there's going to be more and more remote workers. And if you look at where we actually started to where we are now in Cortex 2.7, and these are everything that we've added along as we've come through those ranks. And then again, like I mentioned, we've got these managed services component through our unit 42, through our managed detection and response, through some of our partners that are actually mentioned over there. And then obviously we've also got Premium Success, which gives you a 24/7 customer support and guidance for anything that's required. Shall we ask questions now, or do you want to do it at the end, Lindsay? Or anybody got any questions on XDR?
I don't see anything in the chat on the questions and answers, Tony.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, let's continue. So now that we've looked at what the endpoint does, is how do we handle things from an automation perspective? Now, that's XSOAR. Now, this picture actually just shows you the complexity of security operations. Okay, so everything is on I call it like a spaghetti mesh, and it's a mess because everything and everybody is running around, talking to each other, and there's no clear-cut indication of how to handle this. The other thing is too many tools, too many alerts, too little staff, too many silos. it's just unmanageable to do it in this way. So if we look at why security teams struggle, and this again, we've spoke about it, the amount of alerts. There's too many alerts, not enough people to handle them. So when I say 10,000 alerts per day, I think that can be quite low. I know of customers that they get in the region of around about anything between 1 million and 1.5 million alerts a day. Now, it's impossible to handle them, just as simple as that. The other thing is, there's no time. There's 24 hours in a day. We are humans, we can only do X amount. And then there's obviously limited context. It can take days to actually start understanding and actually doing investigation. Let me give you an example. On that session with Kevin Mitnick, one of the things that a company asked him to do was to actually launch an attack against the company, like if it was a real hacker. So it's not typically a penetration test, it's actually launch an attack. They wanted to see how equipped they were to be able to handle this attack. So he actually did an attack, but there was a little bit of a trick. And these are tricks that the bad actors typically do. So he actually launched 2 attacks. One, a visible type of attack, in other words, an attack that's easily detectable, and an attack that they can start working on. And the second attack was a much more sophisticated attack and sort of a covert type of attack. So it was very, very hidden, well executed type of attack. Now, the first attack, they were able to detect and they were able to handle it within 3 days. Okay, so they phoned him after 3 days, says, listen, we found your attack, we've done the investigation, we're able we took it down in 3 days. So he said, no, that was great, all right? And he left it like that. A month later, they phone him and says, Kevin, guess what? We found your second attack. He says, oh, think about it. If I can do so much damage in an hour, imagine what damage could have been done within a month. So it took them a month to actually detect the second attack. Now, you can't do it like that anymore. The type of attacks, the incredible amount or the sophistication behind these attacks today, we need to be much, much quicker. So XSOAR is actually the path to autonomous SOC. It's a way that you now are able to take everything from an orchestration perspective, start doing as much automation as possible, and then respond to those type of incidents. So when we talk about the orchestration, that's talking about things like the playbooks, the run books, the workflows, the logical organized plan of action, and actually controlling, activating security product stacks from whatever we've got. The automation is actually using scripts, automated scripts, bring all the stuff that we've got in and integrate as much as we can. And then using the machine execution of playbook tasks to do those automations. For example, think about a phishing attack. Now, every organization gets phishing attacks on a daily basis. Okay, that's one of the easiest ways to get into an organization. You find somebody that will click on the link, and you get in. Now, why don't you automate this? I mean, automate every type of a phishing type of attack. That means the analyst doesn't have to worry about it. If you can look at it from the beginning and solve it, getting it sorted without any human intervention, bonus. Now, why do I mention a phishing attack? Because that's very, very easy to explain. So when somebody gets hit with a phishing attack, somebody's going to get alerted. So the administrator has to go out and do things manually. So they're going to have to go to the end user that was affected. They have to make sure that his machine is actually clean. They have to go to the mail server, making sure that there's no traces left behind in the mail server. Then they have to go and analyze and see, did this expand from one to another? Was there a second machine or a second user that opened this link? And so forth. So it becomes a monotonous and a time-consuming effort. It's not difficult to do, but it's time-consuming. And then obviously having the capability to respond. In other words, having things like case management, be able to analyze and report on what's actually found. And one of the biggest problems in all IT, and we're all involved in IT for a long time, it's all got to do with communication and collaboration. An administrator looking after the antivirus and another administrator looking after the firewall. The chances of those two people talking to each other are extremely slim to none. Unfortunately, that's the way it works. And then when we start looking at the way that organizations are actually split nowadays, you could have a team working out of India, you could have another team working out of Australia. How do they ever talk to each other? So the collaboration becomes a problem. So how do we look at solving all of this? So that's where Cortex XSOAR is, where we put everything together. So believe it or not, I actually updated this slide today. And why? Because the slide that I had from last week actually had something less than that. Okay, it actually showed 649. Why do I have to update this? Because we update all these third-party integrations on a daily basis. We get new integrations every single day. We get new playbooks every single day. So if we look at the way that we operate and how we've got massive amount of third-party integrations. We can integrate into any SIEM, mail servers, any type of tools, any type of, or let's put it, the 90% or 95% of any tools, applications that are being used by an organization will be able to integrate into. Now, these are out of the box. It means that you don't have to pay for any integration. You don't have to go customize anything. These are available now, today. Now, what makes this so actually important? So part of all of this is not only the integration. The integration helps with the automation and the orchestration. But together with this, we've got something called real-time collaboration. Now, remember I said one of the big problems with IT, people don't talk to each other. People don't share information. Now, with the real-time collaboration, based on how we actually set it up, so if an incident comes in, we can set it up and say that person A, person B, person C, person D all needs to be involved, irrelevant where they are. It doesn't matter if one is in Australia, the other one is in India. This is what we call our virtual war room, where everybody has to be together. So in other words, virtually together, where they have to collaborate. So if I'm doing endpoint and I'm solving a problem on the antivirus, everything I do actually gets recorded. So then you've got Yanni that's doing the firewall. He can actually see what Tony is actually doing. And now you can actually have an actual virtual discussion of why and how you're actually doing. So you're actually bringing everything together. The other thing is case management. A lot of organizations have got case management tools already. They could be using like anything from BMC or HP OpenView or anything to actually log certain case management. But an organization that doesn't have it, it's built into the solution. So you can actually now actually open up a case, solve the case, and close it. But when I'm talking about opening, solving, and closing, it doesn't mean a manual process. It's all automated. So you can actually see exactly what's going on. You can actually see, you know what, actually last week we actually had 570 alerts. 563 of them were handled automatically, and 7 were actually passed on to the analysts. And then together with that, we've also got our threat intel management, where we can get threat feeds, not only from ours, okay, so remember I mentioned autofocus, so this is ours, but then you can have other type of sources where we can actually get this intel or threat intel feeds to actually make the solution even better, more intelligent. Now, All of this is absolutely great. We can tie everything together. But when we talk about a SOAR solution, there's two factors that makes it extremely important. I mentioned the integration. Be able to integrate into every other tool that we've got is absolutely critical. The other thing is the playbook. The playbooks are what automates a solution. Now, we have got, I would say, I can't say exact numbers because they change again on a daily basis, but we've got over 500 playbooks out of the box. None of our competitors can come even close to that. All right. So what makes this so great? So things like, let's say, a phishing attack. There's a playbook already done for that. So all you need to do is activate the playbook, load the playbook, and off it goes. You don't have to worry about it. It's going to be, everything's going to be automated. Case management will be there. And obviously every report that of every phishing attack that's happened will be taken place. But there's also one very, very important thing, and that is the marketplace. And I'll talk about the marketplace a little bit later. But the marketplace is where everybody can collaborate towards XSOAR. And I'll explain why. So when we talk about the automation and orchestration, is able to respond to any type of security incidents with speed. Remember, Kevin Mitnick mentioned it, speed. Hundreds of product integration. So it's over 700 product integrations that are out of the box. Over thousands of security actions that are actually there. And then together with that, if let's say there's a specific playbook or a specific thing that you need, that there's no playbook for it, we've actually got a visual playbook editor. It's very intuitive. Now, when we actually acquired the company that formed XSOAR, which was called Demisto, I actually got hold of the product and I actually created a playbook within a day. And it was a very, very specific playbook. I actually wanted to create a playbook where you actually looked at mail coming in. So I didn't only look at phishing. So I looked at every type of mail that came into the organization. So there I needed to have integration into the mail server. Then I needed to have some form of threat feeds. So I used third-party tools to actually go look not only at phishing, but any type of malware. So I used our XDR integration. I used the virus or total virus scan that was on the internet. I used the IBM threat feed, and I tied all this together into a playbook. And I created this playbook. So every mail that came in was actually being analyzed for everything. So you didn't even have to worry about having, think about this, an antivirus to scan your mail for on an endpoint. Why? Because I'm doing it on the network even before it gets to the endpoint. I'm doing it on the mail server. So all of this I actually created, and that was under the day. I've never had seen the product before, but because it's so easy to use the visual playbook editor, because everything is there for you. It's all drag and drops. The good thing about it is you could actually even use portions of another playbook that's already there and then create your own. The other thing is you can actually take multiple playbooks, add them together to create one specific playbook for your requirement. The other thing is, I mentioned the virtual war room, where everybody now has to be able to talk to each other. But the good thing is that everything gets recorded in real time and everything gets auto-documented. So you'll know exactly of everything that is going on from beginning through to end. And like I mentioned, the case management, where you're able to actually look at all the reports of everything that's happened, all your dashboards. And then the threat management intel. Again, like I mentioned, how I actually created a playbook to use third-party threat intel feeds to actually do what I wanted to do. So this is just to give you an example of the integrations. Now, again, 560 on top there, it's over 700. But this is just to give you an indication of what we can actually integrate to out of the box. Let's go to the marketplace. Remember I spoke to you about the marketplace. The easy, interesting thing about it is So those figures that I gave you of the integrations, that's what we have done. But if you take what we did or what our partners did and some of our customers did, so partner integrations alone, they did over 500, which is available in a marketplace. Now, when it's available in the marketplace, you can see some of them are free, others are chargeable. Let's say I create a new integration for something specific. I can decide if I'm going to charge for it, yes or no. Not Palo Alto. Whoever created that integration makes a decision. Similar to your Apple Store or your Google Play Store, that you can actually get things for free or you actually buy them. And then new integrations alone last year was over 150. That's excluding the 700 that we've done that are actually available. And then obviously content packs. When we talk about content packs, these are things like the playbooks that have been created. So over 540 of those have been added to the marketplace. Now this is absolutely unique to us. Nobody has actually got something like this. So look, if you're just looking at why our XSOAR, what makes us slightly different to everybody, I mean, we can reduce the amount of alerts massively. The other thing is also be able to reduce the time to respond. So, like I said, everybody is now saying that automation is key. So we need to be able to make things much, much quicker. And the other thing is start coordinating the type of actions across different security products. The other thing is the key differentiators. I've mentioned those. The amount of integrations we've got is way superior to anybody else out there. And these are all things that are out of the box. In other words, the playbooks, they're out of the box. They're there available to use. Those playbooks are not locked. You can actually use them as templates to create another playbook. You can take portions of a playbook. And then obviously the way that we integrate into third-party threat management feeds. Any questions on XSOAR before we move over to expense? No, okay.
No, I don't see anything, Tony.
All right, the third area is expense. And it's exactly what the word means, is how do we expand visibility into what our attack surface or let's say what the attack surface could come from. So what is actually expense? It's the way of seeing or the way of managing that attack surface. Now, before, everything was in one place. So we knew where the perimeter was. The perimeter is not there anymore. Why? Because now we've got remote workers. We've got the cloud. We've got assets that are out there that are unknown. And one of the most important things that companies are actually battling with is anything to do with shadow IT. Now, why they call it shadow IT, it's because it's an IT in the shadows where nobody really knows that it's there. So if you don't know it's there, you can't protect it. It's very simple as that. You can only secure what you know. And it's always been like that. So what we do from a expense perspective is know the attack surface. What is it made up of? So like I mentioned, cloud environment. What about internet-facing assets? Think about it. I've got, if I'm sitting here at my house at the moment, I've got 5 laptops, okay? Now they're all connected to the network, but I've also got my work laptop connected to the same network. So have I got something that could be actually now creating a gap for Palo Alto, for example? So anything that's facing the internet. What about unsanctioned apps? So you know what, I want to do something, I'm a developer, I'm actually just going to download this application of the web, or I'm going to use some SaaS application in the cloud so that I can do some quick development. Nobody knows about it. What about external facing assets, but that are on-prem? And what about assets that are owned by you? How are those being managed? And then obviously IoT and mobile devices. those are extremely difficult to try and understand. And then obviously supply chain assets and anything to do with IT infrastructure that's outside, in other words, like the shadow IT. So what we do from an expense perspective provides an attacker's view to your organization. So in other words, the same way that an attacker would do a reconnaissance, this is what we actually go do. So we go out and try and discover every single cloud resource. We will go discover every remote worker and anything that's related to the organization that's actually internet facing. So we could actually find anything that is actually tied to the organization, and we will be able to find it. How do we do this? Believe it or not, we scan the whole internet. So the use cases for expense is obviously to manage that attack surface. So automatically have an inventory and discover everything that's out there so that you can now look at the risk factors that you've got in your internet assets. The other thing is, yes.
Danny, sorry to interrupt quickly. We have to wrap it up because I think we're going to run out of time. Cool.
2 slides.
We want to take the quiz as well. So,
yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so the expense use case is exactly this. So it's about also looking at your governance. What about your cloud? Start looking at your cloud security and also be able to do the compliance. Anything that's got to do with PCI, to do with NIST, to do in South Africa that's got to do with POPIA. Any of that needs to be focused on. And then obviously looking at third-party due diligence. In other words, identify what type of risks these could actually be putting out to you. So again, so the whole idea of expense is managing that attack surface by, we do the discovery, we do the actual evaluation of it by using things like machine learning engines, and then we're able to mitigate mitigate those risks. So that's me. On the other thing is, you'll see those 2 email addresses. So Lee Tompkinson, she's actually the Cortex specialist in case anybody wants some heavier insights into Cortex. Lee is actually the person to actually contact. All right, so talking about the cahoots. All right, let me just set this up here quickly.
So I had sent the instructions on the chat box for people doing this one for the first time. So you just go to your web browser and you just type kahoot.it. So it's easier if you do it on your mobile phone because you need a second screen. The questions will show on our Zoom presentation, and you can select the correct answers on your mobile phone. The faster you input your answer, the higher your score will be.
Okay, let me see.
Well, yeah, so while Tony is setting up on his side, just go on your web browsers and type kahoot.it. Then Tony will be able to share our game pin for today.
Okay, let me have a look. All right, the game pin. I can actually put this on the chat as well. Let me just put this on the chat.
So it'll be showing on your screen, I guess, if you move from the presentation.
That's the URL and then the game pin. If you just want to use the game pin, that's the game pin.
Yes. So our game pin is 097 12879.
Right, and do us a favor, when you actually use well, when you create a name, use your actual name so that we know who there is, so that for the prize. Because if you're gonna go put a name of Darth Vader, for example, wouldn't know who Darth Vader is, by the way.
I think Katemba have a problem. Katemba, can you log in now? You must share the Kahoot screen, Tony.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Just hang on. Hang on, where is this? I'm trying to get to that screen now. Damn it. All right, I didn't create this, so I'm trying to figure out. Have you done this before, Yanni?
Not on the Kahoot, no, that was done by
Kyle. Kyle did it.
Kyle or Jen did it before.
Are you on the inside the Kahoot thingy?
Yes, I got into it, yeah.
Yeah. So because normally you'd share the screen, because on your screen you're supposed to show the questions as they pop out. So that same screen that was showing you the pin is the same screen that we will be seeing as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it, because I say play in the challenge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, I see there's 2 players in. I'm just trying to figure out how to actually share this now.
Just stop sharing the screen quickly, because we can still see your Cortex.
Yeah.
Okay.
You shouldn't be able to see it now.
No, that's cool.
I'm just trying to get to share this one. I can't actually see it at this point in time.
You must pick the right laptop. You mentioned you have 5 laptops.
Yeah. But the others are private laptops. They're not. Okay, where's this one?
Then if any of the participants are having challenges, I can't see game pin. So the game pin, let's just paste it again, but that it's 09712879.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Actually, it's giving me another pin.
Did you launch twice?
Yeah, I'll show you now. Let me share this one.
Yeah, just share your screen.
Yeah, I'll share this one, then you can actually see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's waiting for players, obviously, but it's weird. This is crazy. Okay, just where does this thing go to? Share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Share, come on.
It's something coming up now.
Okay,
yes.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Just everybody can confirm if they can see the Kahoot pin, the game pin.
Yeah. So
if
now
this is the correct one.
Why change the pin?
I don't know. You must have restart. Oh, we got one.
No, actually not. So, but anyway, here we go. So we've got one person.
Yeah, so we're just waiting for everyone to join. So just go to your browser, type kahoot.it. Then it will request you for this pin that is on the screen right now. That's 2774607. And remember to put your real name so that we'll be able to do the consolidation of the scores so that we will know who our winners are. So we'll just wait for everyone to dial in.
Well, the less people join, the more our chances stand to keep the price.
Yanni, why don't you attempt it? Just for kicks. Just for kicks. Come on.
No.
Come. I'll
He's
send you the
afraid
answers. I'll send you the answers via WhatsApp.
I'm waiting for the WhatsApp.
Let's see.
How many more?
Just a few more people that haven't joined. William, are you having any challenges? Richard, are you having any challenges? Let us know. Okay, William is joined.
William's on.
Yeah. Richard, are you joining? 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, because we just have one person that's missing.
Richard, make sure you join. Give it a try.
Because we're just waiting for Richard. Let us know if we should wait for you or should we proceed.
There you go.
There he is. So I think we're good to start. Tony, you can launch the first question.
Okay. So, what is one of the leading issues in a SOC environment?
I know the answer.
So do I. They play too many games. Or there's not enough coffee. Maybe too many alerts. Bingo. Okay. Look, there we go. Next one. True or false? Next generation AV only relies on a database of signatures. Maybe it's true. Oh, maybe it's false. So the right answer is false. Next one. Let's go for an easy question. Remote terminals can be used for? They'll make coffee. And the correct answer, non-interruptible remediation and troubleshooting. Wow, Ella.
Ella's on fire.
On the streak there. Okay, question 4. What are the Cortex XSOAR tiers? Trick question. And the correct answers, of course, is prevent and probe. Whoopsie. Here we go. Another streak. Come on. Last question. True or false? Cortex XSOAR integrates with competitors' products. Come, people say it's false. Oh, is it true? All right. So the podium. Boom.
Well done, Ella.
William. Wow, that was a good increase. And the winner.
Congratulations, guys.
Congratulations to everyone. Lindsay, you've got
and
the
all
scores.
those that tried as well.
Yes. Are you able to show the other guys' scores?
Let me see. I should be able to. Let me see if I can see it.
I see Ngoni's, Ella's, Williams, and
I'll tell you now if I can see them. Just players 7. Yes.
There's a close tie between
Okay.
Ella and
Yes.
William.
Okay, give me the other scores.
Okay, so Ella, 3,400. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, then we've got Richard,
Yes, how much does Richard have?
3,187.
That's fourth place.
Uh-huh.
That's fourth. Kutemba, 2,953.
So Kutemba is how many?
2,953.
5-3. Okay.
Fifth place.
And I see John didn't finish.
Mm-hmm.
935.
Mm-hmm.
And Senga also didn't finish, 871.
Okay. So obviously we had our main contenders in the game who played for session 1 and session 2. So which makes our automatic winners for, if I do the consolidation, because I was just entering in my scoreboard. So Ngoni will get the first prize with a total of 12,749 points, followed by Ella with 10,766 points. And lastly, on third place will be William with 7,254. So I will be in touch with all the participants, and as well, we just want to set up follow-up sessions with you guys for joining us on these sessions. But thank you so much for participating, but I will be in touch with you with your vouchers. I will not spend them on myself.
Come on, G. Oh, well done to everybody that won. It was great to have you part of this competition. And I hope you all had fun. So like Lindsay said, we will be in contact with you on a one-on-one to follow up sessions after this series.
So remember, the first prize is $500. The second prize first prize to Ngoni is $500. Second prize to Ella is $300, and the third prize to William is $200.
Not bad, eh?
Good stuff. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Tony.